Hello everybody, good morning. We're back here and I've got one of these in my hand, which can mean only one thing. I'm looking at this.
We are Andy, Melissa, Jack and Oliver.
We've spent the last few years preparing to head off sailing to every corner of the world.
A few years ago we bought this huge steel yacht as a project.
But when Ollie came along, we needed a bigger boat with more cabins.
So now we're working on both boats,
Getting Ocean Melody ready to go,
getting Steel Melody ready to launch so that we can sell her.
to put some much needed funds back in the kitty for when we set sail.
This is our keel box, and in here we have a swing keel which is outside the boat on the floor at the moment. It sits on a pin down there and it slides, it pivots up and down when you're sailing. You can lift it up and put it down for different sailing conditions. Now, I don't know if you saw the previous episodes on this, but the original keel box had got some problems, so it's been rebuilt with brand new steel plate, but the welding never got finished. There's a few little bits of welding that we need to do in here to finish this job off. I've got Jonathan back with me helping, which is going to be fantastic. Pretty much ready, but I need to change out of this lovely t-shirt because I don't want to get it wrecked, into some overalls and put on some proper PPE, because historically I've got in a lot of trouble for wearing nice clothes to grind and weld in and not wearing proper PPE. So I'm going to be a good boy today. You can hear outside Jonathan, who's already got stuck in and is cutting some little plates to go underneath the keel pin. So I'm properly kitted up. I'll just take you outside before I start and show you what Jonathan is actually doing. Just explain what's going on out here then, Jonathan.
Two plates have been welded on either side of the keel box, so there's a gap underneath at the minute because there's a pin that the keel obviously pivots on. So as the piece of material comes down over the pin, there's a cutout bit at the bottom because obviously the steel won't fit underneath. So what we've done is cut out two pieces of material, which can be welded underneath, so it's going to be fully welded up and then it'll be fully supported, so the sheet will be complete then.
That's the pin, and the plates were notched and dropped in from above, and what we've got to do is fill in the little notchy bit that's under the pin. What's quite interesting is obviously these plates have been fully welded all the way along the top, all the way down the sides, all the way along the bottom. The only bit that never got welded was round the pin. Now, the argument at the time was, well, that's not going to leak anyway because any water that gets up in there can't get into the rest of the boat. But I tell you what it would have done, because I had a bladder tank in here. The bladder tank has leaked. It's put some water in the bilge and there is water dripping out of that area. If water can get out of the water tank, then water can get into the water tank. So 100% that would have sunk the boat. We've welded in those two little plates on the underside of on the inside of the keel box underneath the keel pin. I'm dropping coffee everywhere. It's ridiculously difficult access because there's not much room under the boat. Really, when we had the boat moved here, I should have asked them to block it up slightly higher. Even if it had been 8 inches higher, it would have just meant that I could get under there with my full welding mask instead of the little eye mask, and I'm very aware how dangerous it is to weld with that tiny little goggles, so I'm minimising how much I do that. In the meantime, Jonathan has also brought his, what's your sander called?
It's just a DA.
It's a
posh DA.
It's a posh disc sander.
With dust extraction.
With dust extraction. So while I'm welding, and Andy's, rather than stand there twiddling his thumbs, he's brought his posh sander with him and he's flatting back the top sides. So this is a, what brand sander is this?
Merker.
Merker, and it means that we can get the bits of paint and clean that up a little bit in there, can we?
Yes, it's Merker. They're specifically for paint. There's a Festool sander out there which is, people say the same. They reckon it's better. This is actually a Finnish company that they only deal with paints, right. And this is only for surface prep.
Mate.
Yep.
So it's going to be a time lapse of you sanding this side of the boat.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's on time lapse.
Hello.
dirty work. Jonathan is grinding the welds on that pin with several different implements, and has also been in the back of the bilge with the 9-inch grinder. Let me show you where we're up to. That's one hole. In a couple of places you can see I nicked the edge of the radius. Can you see there with the grinder? So I'll have to just run a bit of welding there, but they're nice and neat. And there is actually, I have actually put quite a prep on the edge of the kind of the steel. There's almost a 45-degree all the way round. So my plan is to weld those from the inside first, and then I can grind the outside and weld them from the outside as well. And literally, when I said there was only a couple of little patches left to do, this is what I'm talking about. So we've got our pieces of metal cut and shaped, and we're now going to just fettle them to make them fit. So where's the sister to this one? The sister to this one. That's the old piece, that's the new piece. And to be honest, on the inside, you can't even really see any problems with this. So this hasn't rotted through from the inside like a lot of boat issues. This is galvanic corrosion from the outside. You see the pitting on the outside. So it's just a case of now figuring out which one's which and which way round and which way up they go. You all right? I'm trimming it down all the way around, basically. Yeah, that looks amazing. Can you grind off the red oxide around the edge? It's the next morning, and what we want to do today is get those two panels, those two oval shaped pieces of steel welded in properly. There's a couple of places where they need leveling, so we're going to kind of level that, and there's several methods to do this. We can use dogs and wedges, we can use welded G-clamps, or to save a bit of time, if we could do it, we might just use a stick and a lever. This is what I'm talking about. These are the two panels. There's panel 1 and panel 2, and they're just spot welded at the minute, and they look to you probably like they fit perfectly, and they do. They're not bad. But they just need a couple of places evening up so that the metal of the patch is level with the metal in the hole. Whilst Jonathan is looking at whether we need to make some dogs and wedges or whether we can do it with welded G-clamps, etc., I just thought I'd explain, why are we sanding the top sides? Why is Jonathan, he's brought his special sander that you saw earlier, and here is why. When we originally painted these top sides, we used the Jotun 87 primer in red. Now, the primer paint is perfectly good enough to use as a top coat if you accept the fact that it's not UV stable, so the red pigment fades. But the day that we did it, was a very, very, very hot summer's day, and we were rolling and tipping, which is a technique where you roll the paint on, and then another person comes up behind you with a brush and gently brushes out the marks that the roller makes. And because it was so hot, the paint was going off far too quickly and it was tearing. We were always going to paint over the top of this anyway, so John has bought his Super Fandango sander that you saw earlier and has been flatting this back, taking out those brush marks, so that in a couple of 3 weeks, when I get a break in the weather, it's been pouring with rain the last few hours, but when I do get a nice day or two, I can repaint these top sides, and they're already keyed, already prepped, ready for the next layer of paint. While I was outside filming the last bit that you've just watched, Jonathan's been inside just tweaking these bits of steel, rubbing my finger across between the two panels. That's perfectly flush there. And here, that corner is going to need some prizing. That's all fine, that's all fine, this is all fine. And the other panel is going to need, again, a similar amount of just either some pressure putting on it or prying with a screwdriver while I put a tack on. So we're just figuring out the quickest, simplest way to prize these panels when we need to. We can make dogs and wedges.
Do you know what?
Well,
The longest way is the shortest way sometimes. I think we will, because it's taking quite a lot of pressure to push that down.
yeah, so we are going to do dogs and wedges. This one's good apart from that corner.
Apart from that corner, so that needs a dog and wedge put on it anyway.
So Jonathan's going outside to make some dogs at least, because the other panel does need dogging and forcing into place more than you can do with just a screwdriver and a lever. The first one I can weld in place all the way around now from the inside. That looks like a good weld. I've got the heat just right, fantastic penetration, not too much wire. I've got, you know, high heat, low wire speed. It all sounded good. There's one little nick there where when I was cutting the plate out, I went a bit too far with the angle grinder. That's fine. I've welded that up. It's all going to be ground and welded from the outside as well. And then I've actually got a dye penetration kit. So before I paint this up, I'm going to have a play with that and see if there's any chance of anything getting through that weld. And honestly, looking at it, I don't think there is. Jonathan, explain to our darling viewers what dogs and wedges are for those that don't know.
Well, darling, here is a wedge, because it is wedge shaped and doesn't look anything like a dog, but they call them dogs. We're going to weld the dog onto the plate, and then we'll drive the wedge under, which will bring the plate up and force the hull plate down, but it'll be equal forces on both plates, so then they will come up level, and then we can spot tack it. That's it.
There we go. So that is a dog and a wedge. The dog is welded onto the plate that we're going to chain, you know, weld, and the wedge is going to knock that down like this.
So that's now flush.
That should do it.
Yeah, sure do.
We are rapidly running out of gas. This might take proceedings in a minute because we're down to no gas. We're running on fumes, and the welding shop shuts before we get there. I'm happy with that. Come and have a look at this for a weld. Patch number 1, welded from the inside. Patch number 2, welded from the inside. In fact, it's the other way around. Patch number 1, patch number 2. Now, I am sure there are people in the world who weld better than that, but I am 100% confident in that weld. It'll be interesting to see what the dye penetration comes up with. And it also, remember, still needs welding around on the outside. But I'm totally happy that that weld is fine. I was really doubting my abilities with this for several reasons. I sort of had my confidence knocked with my welding. It was like, I'm not 100% sure that it's all okay. I've just seen one other area that I want to go over. It's like when your eyes readjust, you can see it. But yeah, I was really doubting my abilities, had my confidence knocked a little bit with my welding for several reasons, and but now I'm getting back into it. I actually feel like I wish I'd just pressed on with this welding ages and ages and ages ago. I mean, the work that Danny did on the big plate work, there's no way, no possible way I would have tackled that. But all the other stuff, I feel like, yeah, I'm pretty confident now. I made a very stupid mistake yesterday. I was welding those two little square patches of metal into the underneath the keel. There's not a lot of clearance under the keel. Here's my normal welding helmet. It's a very good welding helmet and it protects your whole face, but it is quite big and it's quite cumbersome, and there isn't really room for it under the keel. And when you get your head under the keel, you can't then turn and look upwards to see what you're doing. Simply impossible. What I did instead, and I don't like using these, and I'm fully aware, so lecture me in the comments if you will, but the message is well received. This is an automatic welding mask. You can flip it up to see what you're doing. You can flip it down and it reacts to the welding flash, so it's fine, but it doesn't protect your mouth and your chin, your forehead and your chin. And because this is smaller, I was able to get underneath the keel and look at what I was doing and weld the underside of the keel, the inside of the keel box. The result of that is I was welding quite close to my face. So I'm getting quite close in. I'm trying to keep as far away as I can, but I'm trying to see round the keel pin and round the top, and really, really tricky. And I really struggled with that yesterday. And the problem is I've really badly burnt my top lip, my chin, my cheeks and my forehead, to the point that I was in quite a bit of pain last night. I didn't get any welding flash in my eyes, that's not an issue, but it's given me really bad sunburn. I think probably the solution is get the boat lifted up so that I can get better access to weld it. But we're completely blocked in by 7 other boats, so that's not going to happen. And I need to get on with this work. I think what I need to do is use this, but I've got a leather balaclava that I need to bring down, and I need to make a leather cover for my nose to keep me from getting this kind of thing happening again, although it's mostly done. Anyway, that's what happened. I feel like a bit of an idiot. I'm in a lot of discomfort. It's just like soreness. I feel like a bit of a numpty for it. But I thought, I was discussing it with Jonathan on the way here and saying, should I include it in the YouTube episode and shouldn't I? And I've decided to, because I'd rather be honest about, you know, the things that go wrong. And I've always said, this is not a how-to channel. This is what happened channel. I'm never going to tell anybody how to weld a steel boat. I'm just going to tell you, this is what I did and this is what happened. And I ended up with burns on my face yesterday from doing it arguably wrong. This is the weld crack detection stuff. Strictly speaking, this is for crack detection, but I'm going to be using it to detect any potential holes in my weld or problems with my weld. You have a cleaner, a developer and a penetrant. So we've just been cleaning up that area with a wire brush and just nibbled away the bits of welding where we'd weld the dogs on. Can you see there and there where we've got the dogs welded on? We've nibbled that away with the flat wheel. We've cleaned up the area with a wire brush. What's the first stage of this NDT penetration crack detection that we're not using for crack detection but are using for weld decency detection?
So we're going to do an NDT test, which is non-destructive testing with dye pen. So there's cleaner, developer and penetrant. So we go cleaner, penetrant, let that sit for 10 to 15 minutes because it goes into all the cracks, if there is any.
And the penetrant's like an ink?
Which is like an ink, which it won't do. And then we use the cleaner again over the top of that to get the surface clean. And then any voids of any description the ink will go into. Obviously it's dried at this point, so then when we put the developer on, which is basically a white spray paint, you can use anything, but obviously it's formulated for this one, you just mist it, you don't go crazy with it, small spray over the area, and what will happen is if there's any voids at all, cracks or anything, there will be, you'll see a blue ink come through, which will then highlight to you that you've got a crack. It could be a hairline crack, it could be a small pinhole, but you've got a void there of some description. So then you have to investigate it further.
So step one, clean the area with the supplied cleaner.
I'll just add that I've wire brushed this quite thoroughly. So I know the presses quite well, but each one has its own individual setting time.
Oh, and it's pink, which is nice.
Yep.
Oh, it's purple, which is even better. Right, you'll be pleased to know we did manage to get to the welding shop in time. So we've got fresh gas bottle, which is fantastic. And while I was there, I picked up this, which is a proper welding hood. And it goes under my welding helmet, but it will protect me from sparks and from getting my face. Look, it's really, really sore. It's just like bad sunburn. I don't think I've done myself any permanent injury, but what an idiot. I've now got the proper, so there's after me harping on at the beginning of the episode, oh, I've got all my correct PPE, and then I didn't have the correct PPE, did I? Numpty. But I have now. So we've got a fresh gas bottle, we've got a welding hood, we're still working, but we're going to close the episode here because it's long enough. And next time you come back, you can see how we got on with the die penetration test, which is not really a penetration test, it's a crack test, but we're using it to penetration test. And we're going to V those welds, we're going to weld them from the outside, and we're going to have a look at the other bits on the hull, but the work is going splendidly. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Thanks as always to our patrons and anybody that's helped us along with the channel. See you next time, guys. Bye.